All right, family. We live once again. The general is on the battlefield, the spiritual battlefield. We're discussing why isn't the Bible in chronological order? You see, what do you gain by putting anything out of order? See, this is a delusion. You see, this is a diversion, on what the reality is about the Bible. That this is, that the supposed word of Jesus Christ is actually at the end of the New Testament. And that ain't even his words. You see, the majority of the book, if you get the red letter Bible, and you deal with the fact that even in the so-called Gospels, that only 10% of the New Testament or the Gospels is actually supposedly the words of Jesus Christ. So who words are they? Because, we want to know who the words belong to. We got a dilemma here. Why is the Bible not in chronological order? I could tell you first and foremost, a lot of people think that they're Christians. You're not Christian, you're Paulinites. St. Paul, how he became a saint, murdering Christians. I mean, do y'all understand the reality of this? But then you come here and say Jesus forgave him and so on and so forth. And well, then Jesus can forgive Hitler. Did Jesus forgive Hitler? Did he forgive all the murderers or mass murderers of world history? And forgiving is one thing, but to put him at the head of the class of the righteous, you gonna put him at the head of the class of the righteous? St. Paul, a murderer of Christians? Huh? This what he was. He was Saul of Tarsus. He was Saul of Tarsus knocking off Christians, executing Christians. And here it is. He went to the head of class. They say he was having debates with Peter, who walked with Jesus. Say he was having debates with Peter. Here's a man who is a murderer of Christians. Then he began to debate with those that supposedly walked with Jesus. Took over that, took over the head of the class. So when we look at when we talk about the chronology of the Bible, which is very significant, that Paul's books are actually the oldest books. Did y'all know that? Did y'all know that Paul's books are actually the oldest books? Galatians, Corinthians, that these books are older than the Gospels. So I'm thinking to myself, well, damn, where was they at? I mean, explain that to me. Where was they at? These are supposedly the men, the apostles that walked with Jesus. And you mean to tell me that Paul had enough time to murder Christians, become a Christian, take over Christianity before any of them was able to write the Gospels? Hold on. That's unbelievable. Yeah. That's unbelievable. Let me try to get it in here, y'all. I had it in there, just stupid computer. Stupid computer. This is significant that we understand this, though. Because a lot of what they're doing is they're writing these books as they go. Once you understand that the book is written in chronological order, and once you understand the chronology of the book, you're going to see that they had to smooth these books out. So there's been some more editing to the book to smooth these books, to flow from one book to the other, to make it look like they in some type of unison and things of that nature, you're going to find out that they're just not true. You understand what I'm saying? That they have been editing these books up until yesterday to smooth out, because first and foremost, we have to understand that the books, as we know it today, if you go into Ethiopia, you got something like 80 something books in there. 88 books, something like that. Then you go into the Catholic Bible, you got something like 72. Then you go into the Protestant Bible, you got something like 66. How many books is it? Well, the reality was that there was no the reality is that it was under Constantine who actually put the books in under one cover, a canon. You see, or putting the books into a canon. So, that's first and foremost. So there was no Bible. You had various books out there that from the start were independent. So you had to get your hands on these books. So who gathered? Because it was hundreds and hundreds of books out here. Still is. So it wasn't God that says, this is what I want in my book. Where does it say God said these are the books that go in the canon? It didn't say that. Constantine in the Council of Nicaea did that. Put these books, went around, and it was other books, Barnabas, Enoch, and all these other books. Hundreds of books. What you call theological books. You see? Yeah. The theological books. So you just took what ones you want. So each denomination, you got the Ethiopian, they got so many books. You got the Orthodox, the Catholic Bible, they got so many books. The Protestant got 66 books. They took some books out. Took out of what? It was never in one canon. To see, that's the illusion. That it was ever in one canon. And did God send down a list of books that he said that he validated? Where God lists at? Can somebody show me the list of books? Because God never put the books in one canon. So anybody out there can show me a list that God, checked off on each book and say, yeah, this is my book. Anybody got that list? Can anybody show me that list? Nobody can show me that list. So the books, existed independently until Constantine put them. That's right. Yeah, so it was under Constantine that put these books, various books, over hundreds of books. Matter of fact, this was the book. This was the style of writing. You see, the reality is these are not ancient books. These are not ancient books at all, reality-wise. I just want to be clear about it. The oldest complete New Testament Bible is almost 300 some years after Jesus Christ. This is almost 300 some years after Jesus Christ. Look at that gap. And it's really, and so you got and so the thing is, if Matthew, John, Mark, and Luke wasn't writing these books while they was walking, you walking with God, nigga. Where you supposed to be taking notes at all times. You supposed to be taking notes at all times. How is it that when you look at the so-called the Gospels, here it is. So when we talking about the oldest books of the New Testament, Thessalonians, Galatians, Corinthians, 1 and 2, Romans. So these were written by Paul the Apostle about 20 to 30 years after Jesus' death. So you mean to tell me that Paul, Saul of Tarsus, who was a hitman for a Jewish hitman on Christians, he was able to execute Christians, see Jesus on the road to Damascus, convert, write all these books before the very men who walked with Jesus was able to pen the Gospels? Is we to believe this? Is we to believe this? I mean, you got to be really, really, really confused to believe something like that. And then after that, Philippians, Colossians, Philemon, Ephesians, all of these come before the Gospels. Then you get the Gospel of Mark, 65 to 70 of the Common Era. Gospel of Matthew, 70 to 85 of the Common Era. Gospel of Luke, 80 to 90 of the Common Era. Apostle or Acts of the Apostles, 80 to 90. And then later Episcopals, James was written 60 to 90 of the Common Era. First Peter, 60 to 90. Hebrews, 65 to 90. All this shit was written after the many years after supposedly Jesus had died. You see, Jude, even John, the Gospel of John was written 90 to 100 to okay. There we go. Yeah. So yeah, well, you know, that's what they say. The Catholics didn't even exist at the time. Am I freezing? Yeah, I froze for a minute. How am I not? Am I black? Tell me how, if I'm black. Tell me how I'm looking out there. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know. Yeah, so yeah, Catholicism didn't even come into existence until around 1400 some AD, 1500 AD. What no Catholicism. They lying on that. You go to the early popes and they don't got no history on them. They just making it up to give you some literary diversions. You know, this is spiritual diversions to fool people. Okay, I'm black. Okay. You see, so ain't no Catholicism. The first Christian was the first church was the Hagia Sophia over there in Turkey. We got to go back to Walter Williams so you can look that up. Wasn't no St. Peter. They just built St. Peter's. The Constantine capital was Constantinople. You don't see him build, when you look at the churches, even when you deal with the councils, when you deal with the council of Ephesus, the council of Chalcedon, the council of Nicaea, the council of, Ephesus? You see, okay, I'm back. So that's over there in Turkey. That's over there in Byzantium. You see, that's where the councils, why they wasn't happening in Rome, why the great councils of Christianity wasn't happening in Rome. You know why? Because the Hagia Sophia was the church, the mother church of Christianity, and the great councils of Christianity was taking place in Turkey, which at that time was a part of Byzantium. Okay, that's why. So you see, so we have to understand that there is a diversion going on. They're just like you got over 1,000 years between Moses and the Dead Sea Scrolls. You got over 1,000 years. You got over 1,000 years in between. How you gonna be silent for? Where did y'all get the books from? And people don't understand that the Dead Sea Scrolls is fraudulent. They created them and put them in that cave and then say, oh, look what we found. It don't make no difference. Nobody, even if they was real, nobody had access to them. So what difference do it make? They was in the damn cave for a thought. Nobody had access, but they trying to put it there to make it seem like they had some ancient presence. You cannot go by no one book. You cannot go by no one scroll. Ask the question, was it mass produced? And if it was mass produced, you should have hundreds or thousands of scrolls that verify the same concepts. No one book, no one scroll gonna do nothing for the world. So that's a garbage. And ain't no way you gonna have 1,000 years of silence and then come up with all the books. You see what I'm saying? This is fraudulent. This is fraudulent. These books are just made up. So the Bible is not in, and the reason, and if you put it in chronological order, it would literally prove the reality that that Christianity was started by St. Paul. Christianity was started by St. Paul. That's who started Christianity. St. Paul. He had more influence on, and I done seen a lot of books. They got him the most influence behind Muhammad. They have St. Paul, the most influential, most influential person in the world, because he had, he's even more influential than Jesus, because he was responsible for putting the New Testament together. If it wasn't for St. Paul, you wouldn't even have the New Testament. Okay, so you are not Christian, you are Paulinites. That's the reality. And if you put it in chronological order, it'll prove that point. So family, we'll be touching back on this again. Don't you go nowhere. I appreciate y'all being here. Tap in. Yeah, they always, they try to say that St. Peter is the first pope. Pope where? Pope where? Where was the church at? They was killing, where was the church? Where at? They was living in the catacombs, and you understand what I'm saying? They was in the catacombs somewhere. They had no church. Ain't nobody know where no Peter at. They don't know where no tomb, and they ain't never found one tomb of any Christian or Jewish prophet, king, nobody. They have never found one tomb nowhere. They have never found any documentation from the time in which they say these people have lived. So I'm done with it, family. I'll see y'all in a minute. Get over to Patreon, work with the general. Man, I'm going to have some fire breakdown on what's going on over there in Iran, straight from the general, the real general. I'll see y'all in a minute. Black Power.